Hi, I'm Laura. Thank you for coming to watch this video. I wanted to share with you some of the very basic postures, also called asanas, that are what we practice often. Probably every time we practice, we engage with the various asanas that I'm going to show you briefly now. We start in Sukhasana, the seated posture, which means easy pose, basically. And I sit in it this way. Many sit like this. For my body, it feels more easeful. It feels better like this. You can sit however is most comfortable in your body. Find your way into a comfortable seat. That's how we begin every class. So after we've sat and grounded ourselves, become present in our bodies, in our breath at the beginning of class, we generally move into either table pose or child's pose. And I would like to mention that you can make use of props. For example, in either child's pose or table's pose, we come to our knees. If it feels better in your body to bring your knees to a blanket, I encourage you to do so. For this video, I'm going to move my blanket aside. Also, please always feel the freedom to modify any of the poses, to use yoga props. Blocks are very nice. They bring the earth up to you in certain poses. Always feel comfortable modifying as long as you do your best to keep good alignment throughout the practice. So I do bring an emphasis to a nice long spine, given that we live in a culture these days where we tend to bring our heads forward a great deal. I encourage us to lift up and lengthen the spine, and we'll do so throughout our entire yoga class. I'll encourage the shoulder blades to come down the back and an openness through the collarbones, through the heart, I will say, oftentimes. So getting on with it. Child's pose. In child's pose, we bring the big toes together, the knees hip-width distance apart, and then we draw the sits bones towards the heels. If this is uncomfortable for you, you can roll a blanket or a towel and place that right like this, right in between the thigh and the calf. Otherwise, you can draw your tailbone towards your heels and then begin with a long spine to draw the inner groins back and in. Draw the belly in and grow long. Lengthen the upper body over the thighs, over the mat, extending the arms overhead. Now for some, the head will lower down, the forehead will easily reach the mat. For others, it might be helpful to bring a block or a blanket under the forehead. And we'll stay here for a number of breath cycles. And perhaps as you breathe and the fascia and connective tissue, the muscles, ligaments, and tendons in the body begin to lengthen and stretch, perhaps your head will reach the mat eventually, and if not, that's okay. Being where we are in each moment is part of the practice of yoga, accepting ourselves just exactly the way we are in this very moment. So some of the time we will practice child's pose with our knees out wide, and I'll lift my knees rather than drag my knees either into a wider placement on the mat or lift and bring them back to hip width distance apart. Never dragging them, because dragging can cause issues in the groin by pulling on the ligamentation. So wide child's pose looks like this. And in my practice, I encourage the arms to remain strong and active, drawing the muscles to the bones in the extended arms. Coming back to hip width distance, I'll come into table pose, which is another asana that we do often in our practice. And for this, I'll bring my knees directly under my hips and my hands and wrists right under my shoulders. Keeping the spine long, I'll draw my belly up towards the back body, the spine, and let the heart sink down in between the shoulder blades. Keeping the hands spread wide, the middle finger facing forward. Start often with my toes turned under, and sometimes I'll cue you to press the tops of your feet into the mat. From table pose, often I will give instruction to move your hands a hand's length or so farther forward, keeping the hands spread wide, pressing into the index finger and the thumb to stabilize the hand, because that's the stronger part of the hand. The middle finger facing forward, drawing the shoulder blades onto the back body, away from the ears, towards the hips. With toes turned under, I'll press up. And so will you. Press up, and perhaps you'll bend your knees. Maybe a micro bend or a deeper bend, or maybe you'll lengthen your legs. However it is that you will be practicing will be perfect in that moment. You lift your sits bones towards the sky and then press them back towards the wall behind you. Pressing out of the hands, out of the wrists, and lengthening the spine, drawing the belly in towards the back body, sending the shoulder blades towards the hip bones, with an external rotation at the head of the arm bones and an internal rotation at the head of the thigh bones. Staying here for a few breaths, and then eventually bending the knees, and with a deep breath in, stepping up, all the way up to your hands. When you might you might find your blocks. Bringing your hips right over your ankles, best you can. You'll remain here in this forward fold. Taking a couple of breaths here. Perhaps I'll cue you to bring your hands to your hips, keeping your spine long. We'll firm the muscles to the bones in the legs, and then inhale and lift up. Lengthening the arms to either side, coming into Tadasana, mountain pose, Tadasana. Bringing the feet right under the hip sockets. I'll encourage you to find all four corners of your feet. Lifting your toes off of the mat and spreading them wide. I'll encourage you to press into the big toe pad, the outer heel, the baby toe pad, and the inner heel. Lifting through the arches, activating the musculature in the feet, then lowering the toes to the mat. Standing in Tadasana, you will be encouraged to stack your ears over your shoulders over your hips, hips over knees, over ankles. Tadasana. Those are some basic poses to begin with. and there are more to come. Throughout our yoga practice, alignment is important in order to stay safe and care for ourselves in the most beneficial way. Once again, I encourage you to use props, blocks, straps, blankets to assist you in a wonderful way of accessing yoga in your body. Thank you again so much for viewing this video. From my heart to your heart, Namaste.